I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters.
Curious if the White House and the president still stand behind his comment that he's never been involved and has never even spoken to his son about his.
That's the lab in China at the center of the controversy.
Sorry about the video. It's not currently working like it sometimes is. Joe Biden at the center of probably the biggest political scandal in 50 years. Hunter also at the center of it. Breaking news coming from that whole thing. Kamala Harris said some pretty dumb things over the weekend and is doubling down on it in the state of Florida. We'll talk about that and the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the place that we didn't fund gain of research, but now we're not funding it anymore, says the Biden administration. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in. My name is Jobob. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
2, 1.
Here we go!
That might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually her name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is Tuesday, July 25th, the year of our Lord 2023. A lot of stuff going on today. Got a blockbuster. Kamala saying some stuff over the weekend. I posted something about it yesterday and got some pretty intense racial blowback, which I thought was fun. But I got to get to this Hunter thing because, I think there's a lot of people that say things like, why are we still talking about Hunter? What is the deal with talking about Hunter? I get that. I see several of you in the comment section saying, why are we talking about Hunter still? Hunter's not running for president. Yes. However, there is breaking new developments that happened kind of over the weekend, but late yesterday morning-ish, that Hunter Biden's best friend, Devin Archer, is now going to testify in Congress, I think Monday of next week, saying that Joe Biden more than 24 times was called by Hunter in these business dealings. Now, if you'll recall, several interviews Joe Biden did with sit-down interviews that he knew things were coming like this. He said that he had never even discussed business with Hunter. This is not new information. Probably the most circulated clip is Peter Doocy asking that to him on the campaign trail because he got pretty aggressive and said, I've never talked about Hunter. But I decided to go and pull some other clips. There's him talking to Savannah Guthrie, him talking on 60 Minutes, saying the same thing. And now there is somewhat of new. So yesterday we talked briefly about the paper, this report that Chuck Grassley, senator, released regarding Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and their conversations. That's newsworthy regardless of what side of the aisle you're on. If you're on the Joe Biden side of the aisle, it's newsworthy because look at this crazy senator that put out this crazy piece of information that nobody believes, if it turns out to be not true. If you're on the Hunter's a crook and the Biden crime family is a real thing, this is a big news story. It's a big news story regardless, and nobody but Fox and the New York Post and Breitbart covered it. But before we kind of get into that, I want to play these clips because this is more of Joe Biden saying that he did not ever discuss business with Hunter. And then after that, we got a clip of KJP talking about that. But here's two clips, somewhat longish, but I think it's fascinating because he goes into detail. It's not like a no, I never did that and walks away. It is a never. And then also too, this first clip, watch the kind of aggressive stance he takes towards Savannah Guthrie. It's kind of interesting. Check it out.
Do you think it was wrong for him to take that position,
No.
knowing that it was really because that company wanted access to you?
Well, that's not true. You're saying things you do not know what you're talking about. No one said that. Who said that?
Hunter said the only thing you said to him was, quote, I hope you know what you're doing.
That's exactly right. He's a grown man. What I meant by that is, I hope you've thought this through. I hope you know exactly what you're doing here.
Meaning what?
That's all I meant. Nothing more than that, because I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters, and I've never discussed them because they know where I have to do my job and that's it, and they have to make their own judgments.
But you understand people say, Joe Biden, he's an experienced politician, statesman, knows the issues of Ukraine. Why didn't he just say to his son, this is one to take a pass on, it may not look good?
He was already on the board, and he's a grown man. And it turns out he did not do a single thing wrong, as everybody's investigated.
Didn't do a single thing wrong. Interesting. Well, that was all before a bunch of those phone calls came, or sorry, the allegations of those phone calls became public. Like I said earlier, Devin Archer, who is Hunter Biden's best friend, said that he was in the room and sat there and watched Hunter call Joe Biden while he was the vice president, in order to show these prospective clients that he does have the influence that he says he does. Now, in this particular case, because it's not really a case, it's going in front of Congress and the American people, it's in the court of public opinion, the Biden administration and Joe Biden is going to try and make the claim that, well, did you see any policies changed because of this? Is influence peddling on itself bad, or does there have to be some sort of policy change in order to say that this is the worst thing in the world? Now, if the shoe is on the other foot and you're looking at the Supreme Court justices, Democrats would say that no, it's just the fact that Clarence Thomas, one of the most powerful attorneys in the country, is friends with another super powerful attorney in the country. That is enough to say that it's corruption. Okay, so shoe on the other foot, your guy allegedly taking phone calls from his son, who is peddling around his influence. Isn't that enough? Again, Democrats' rules here. If there is no change in the policy, I guess there can feasibly be made an argument of, no, they were just giving us money because they liked us. But then, why then for a decade would businesses around the world, Chinese companies, Eastern European companies, African companies, continue to give Hunter Biden millions of dollars? What was it, $17 million over the course of like 5 years, with no actual tangible change in any sort of policy? Why would that happen? That seems super unlikely and unrealistic. But then again, Joe Biden never said that he never talked to his son. Yesterday, KJP was asked whether or not he talked to his son about business dealings and whether or not the White House still holds true to that. Check this out.
Chairman James Comer today says that the Oversight Committee, has evidence that the president in the past communicated directly with foreign business associates of his son Hunter Biden many times. Curious if the White House and the president still stand behind his comment that he's never been involved and has never even spoken to his son about his business.
So I've been asked this question a million times. The answer is not going to change. The answer remains the same. The president was never in business with his son. I just don't have anything else to add.
Okay, so the problem is that did change. Remember, I think I've been hammering this point for a couple of weeks now. The administration's stance has changed to never talked to his son about business to was never in business. She just said it right there. So interesting. So this week, we'll see if the mainstream people pick this up. I know like Newsmax and OAN and all of the quote-unquote right-wing conservative news organizations were picking this up, but the New York Times hasn't said anything about it, which this is a bombshell story regardless. Whether or not, however this turns out, this is a big deal. If it turns out that Chuck Grassley, Hunter Biden's BFF, and all of those other people, and the whistleblowers, all of these people were just lying, that's a huge story also. So the fact that nobody else is covering this is insane to me. But I guess we'll see what happens. Monday, I believe. He's not necessarily testifying, Devin Archer. I think it's like an interview. Like I don't really know what the difference is, to be honest, but crazy. It is crazy. But yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Moving on to this. Entirely different change of topic here, because I thought this was fascinating. Kamala Harris, not the brightest tool in the shed. I want to lay this out in a way that makes the most sense. Kamala Harris said something that is so, I don't even know, it is effectively an outright lie. Her and her team found one line that is objectively true, but in some way, I guess you can theoretically manipulate that line. I don't think you can, but they thought that you could manipulate that one line to say something that it doesn't say, and then say that the entire curriculum is that. I want you to watch a couple clips here. Actually, first things first, I want you to watch this clip. This whole idea of book banning, I think is hilarious. I know that, I don't know, maybe me thinking it's hilarious is like, I genuinely think it's funny. Anytime somebody like Gavin or somebody says banning books, I just think it's funny, because who falls for that sort of thing? But at the same time, apparently many people fall for that sort of thing. So here's Kamala Harris with the book banning, and then we'll get to the curriculum in Florida that she is so god-awfully wrong about. Check it out.
Extremists pass book bans to prevent them from learning our true history. Book bans in this year of our Lord 2023.
Yeah, I think that is hilarious. Yeah, if the book contains explicit, graphic, anything really, I won't get into the nitty-gritty details of that because it grosses me out, then it doesn't need to be included in the curriculum in libraries of schools. Now, is that a ban? No, it is not. You know what is also not included? The heated rivalry between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird all throughout the Lakers and Boston Celtics rivalry. Just not included in the math curriculum at a local elementary school, or really any of the curriculum. I don't think a serious look at the rivalry that shook the nation between Magic Johnson and Larry Bird and the two dynasties, the Boston Celtics and the Los Angeles Lakers, I don't think that is delved into deep enough at all in schools in our country. Therefore, it is banned. Why have schools banned the learning of one of the greatest rivalries in sports history? That's how idiotic this stuff sounds. If you don't include something in the curriculum, and if the thing that you don't include is objectively unincluded, if everybody agrees that that thing shouldn't be included and it's not included, you don't get to walk around saying, this is banned! You just look silly. I don't know how to respond to this in terms of like, do we continue to laugh at it? Because that's what I think it is. I posted a thing yesterday, and I'll play that clip next, kind of laughing at how silly some of this stuff is. And I don't know, that's my response to it. I understand people get really upset about this sort of stuff, but my response is to laugh. And the thing that I laughed about yesterday that I thought was funny, genuinely funny, is this clip. Check this out, and we will discuss reality on the other side.
And while they do this, check it out. They push forward revisionist history. Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
You know why? You know why I think that's funny? In my head, you know, I'm thinking that's genuinely a funny thing, is because it's clearly acting on her part. What she said is not true, and I'll get into that in just a second. She knows what she's saying isn't true, and yet they are trying to gaslight us. I think it's funny, and I'm genuinely amused and horrified by the fact that politics is effectively acting nowadays. If you act aggrieved enough, because look, Kamala doesn't buy this. She doesn't believe what she's saying. It's an insane thing to say. And if she does believe the thing that she's saying, we got some bigger problems. But she doesn't believe this. But yet the ability to muster up the yelling to the people, I don't know. I just can't not find that funny. Now, to get to the actual nitty-gritty of what she said, it is kind of funny. What did she say? They are teaching that enslaved people benefited from slavery. This is from the National Review. I think this is Charles C.W. Cook writing, saying that the entirety of the curriculum is long and exhaustive. I'm summarizing here. Is so long and exhaustive that to pinpoint a line, and I'll tell you what the line is in a little bit, and you'll be like, what? How did they take that from that? Is insane. Listen to this. This is a brazen lie, writes Cook. It's an astonishing lie. It's an evil lie. It's so untrue, so deliberately and cynically misleading that in a sensible political culture, Harris would have been obligated to issue an apology. Instead, NBC confirms that she will repeat that lie today in a speech in Jacksonville. This was yesterday, in that speech in Jacksonville. He goes on to say this. Below, I've copy and pasted every single reference to slavery, slaves, abolitionism, civil rights, and African Americans in the document. That document is, of course, the curriculum for the school, along with the curriculum for the teaching of the Holocaust. He linked to that. He says this, the list of all of the times they referenced slavery, African Americans, abolitionism, slavery, I said slavery already. He says this, the list is extremely long. That's because that's because there's a lot in there. If you are able to read it and conclude that the single reference to slavery developing skills, which he's bolded, is indicative of the entire narrative, the direction of the course, rather than a tiny and correct part of it, then you're beyond saving and you deserve to live your life as an ignoramus. Now, I'm not going to read through the entirety of it, and you can't see this. There are literally 191 different bullet points saying things like this. Let me find, I should highlight these. Talking about the conditions of Africans during the passage to America, the living conditions of slaves in the American colonies, the Caribbean colonies, and Central America and South America, including infant mortality rates, the harsh conditions and the consequences of the British American plantations, the harsh conditions of the Caribbean plantations, including poor nutrition, rigorous labor, and diseases. It talks about how the South tried to prevent slaves from escaping using their Underground Railroad, and tried to end the efforts of the Underground Railroad, the overwhelming death rates caused by this practice. It says that Africans resisted slavery, the ramifications of prejudice, racism, and stereotyping on individual freedoms, and the struggles faced by African American women in the 19th century related to issues of suffrage, business, and access to education. The bottom line here is this course thoroughly and entirely teaches the awfulness and terribleness of slavery. It does not skimp out at all on that, which is the case that Kamala Harris is making, horribly, by the way. Here is the bolded sentence in the curriculum that Kamala Harris is talking about. Instruction includes how slaves develop. Let me read the one before it, because I think that's pretty important to this. Examine the various duties and trades performed by slaves. For example, agricultural work, painting, carpentry, tailoring, domestic services, blacksmithing, transportation, etc. Then it says this. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills which, in some instances, could have applied for their personal benefit. Could be applied for their personal benefit. That's it. That's the entire thing, which is also just objectively true. The line before that says some slaves, which again, this is not a slavery was good in any way, shape, or form. If that's what you take away from this, like Charles C.W. Cook said, you are an ignoramus. But while people were slaves, there were trades that were picked up. And I said this yesterday in this little clip that I put out that got so much pushback and blowback. It's very interesting. I said that if you develop a skill in a terrible time or under a terrible system, once that system or time ends, the skill doesn't go away. In a lot of cases, I don't know. There's, when you're talking about slaves that had skills developed during slavery, you could, I don't even know if you can make, the thought could come to your mind that some slave owners, again, while terrible, trusted their slaves enough to give them the responsibility to do skilled jobs and labor. Nobody is saying that slavery is good. What I'm saying is someone could have it in their head of, okay, so there were people that understood that slavery was bad, judging by the trustworthiness they gave to their slaves. Again, in no way, shape, or form am I defending slavery or any of the actions. But to say, as Kamala did, that the course as a whole, which is effectively what she's trying to communicate, is that enslaved people benefited from slavery, is so disgustingly wrong, it has to be a blatant lie. And then back to the point, Kamala doing her Kamala thing, acting in front of the crowd, she has to know that that's a blatant lie. And because she knows a blatant lie, what she's doing is acting. And when I think politicians are acting, I think it's funny. Coming around full circle. What a crazy time. Again, slavery was bad. I can't believe that you have to, in order to have a conversation about some of the skills, which were good and valuable skills that people learned during a terrible time. I can't believe you have to have the disclaimer of, yes, of course, slavery is bad. It's stupid. What a stupid time to be alive. I guess you want to hear some of the comments I got. So I basically said that in a real form yesterday on Instagram, and I got some comments that I thought were kind of funny. Somebody said, "Preach it, Uncle Tom," as if pushing back against a horrible lie of a politician who was playing with fire in terms of starting a race war. I'm the one that gets called that. This one I thought was interesting. And by the way, just so you know, the comments, I find them amusing. If you're commenting on this live video, if you're commenting on Instagram, I don't actually care. Once my Instagram app closes, I forget about all the things because I live a normal life and am more concerned with revamping the electrical panels in my house than I am with some dumb comment somebody left on Instagram. So if you think, got him on the comment section, I'm sorry to disappoint. Somebody also said this: "You're like a Jew that supports Hitler." Okay. There's several more of these that I think are funny and amusing, but we'll move on to the Wuhan stuff because I think there is another interesting development going on in the country. Moving on to this entire deviation from Kamala and Joe Biden, which I am really excited about the Joe Biden thing because there's also, we won't get into that right But let's see. Ending the funding of the lab we weren't funding. So if you recall, Rand Paul questioning Dr. Fauci in those Senate committee hearings, however many years ago, Dr. Fauci saying, we did not fund gain-of-function research. And a bunch of people saying that, well, the lab leak theory is just a bunch of nonsense. They got a bunch of scientists to sign on to a thing that's saying it definitely did not come from a lab. And now, all of a sudden, without admission that the lab leak theory is true, the Biden administration is stopping the funding to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I think they were getting about $1 million a year, which is a lot of money, but in the grand scope of what the federal freaking government spends, it's not all that much money. But interesting. So the virus didn't come from the lab. If you suggested the virus came from the lab, you were demonized and ostracized and banned from the internet for 1.5 years, 2 years. And yet, the Biden administration is also simultaneously saying, hey, we don't need to give them money anymore. Why would you not want to give them money anymore? Is it because the entire international community was saying that, hey, this whole lab thing, this lab in particular plays fast and loose with some of the safety guidelines. Maybe maybe we shouldn't give them money. They also probably leaked the coronavirus. Maybe not necessarily. I'm not even saying in a weaponizing way. But yeah, if you're going to maintain and defend calling all of those people those terrible names who simply suggested the lab leak theory might have been a possibility, how are you then also going to justify, but we're also not going to fund the lab anymore? Is that not, in a way, an admission of, oh, yeah, this lab wasn't going through all of the safety protocols and the safe practices and all that sort of stuff? But alas, it seems that nobody is going to care about this because it's not really making any news at all. I don't think the New York Times has touched it. So there's that. Wow, a lot of comments in the comment section longer today than they normally are. But I think the sentiment is generally generally consistent here. Yeah, wild. You know, I don't know. What an odd time. With the Kamala thing, I had a friend. Let me throw Kamala back on the screen for a hot second. Just really quick, I had a friend message me saying, hey, so how do you know? And this is a smart guy. I don't think we agree politically speaking, but is objectively a smart dude. He brought up a point saying, you know, what has changed and why are they changing it this way? And I was like, you know what, honestly, I don't actually know what Florida used to be, how it has been. I do know, though, for the past several decades, the Howard Zinn Hate America history textbooks have been in circulation. And it's fascinating. Kamala used the word revisionist history. So we had history books for a long time, and then new history books came in order to revise the old history. And people apparently want to go back to what we had, and now that's being called revisionist. It's a mind bender that I'm not sure how you can get yourself through. Anyways, back to that friend that had messaged me saying, how do you know any of that? And I'm like, honestly, I don't. But at the same time, I don't think that's the focal point of whether or not what Kamala said was so out of context and so misleading that it's just a bold-faced evil lie. Anyways, all that being said, I do not have intimate knowledge of Florida middle school history curriculum. But that notwithstanding, to pretend what Kamala Harris said is factual and honest intellectually is, I think, means you have some ideological blinders on. Anyways, that'll do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. If you haven't already, give me a follow on any of your social media platforms. Just type in JOBOB, be able to find me pretty much anywhere. Facebook is still demonetized. We're going on 2 months now of $0. So I am curious, if you're on my Facebook page watching this, I know we stream this to like a bunch of different platforms, but if you happen to be on my Facebook page watching this, I would love to hear from you either by sending me a message or commenting. Have you seen an ad? Do you see an ad? Because we've been going back and forth with Facebook for about 2 months now. To my understanding, they are still running ads on all of this stuff. They are still making money and still arbitrarily deciding to demonetize. I don't need to repeat the story. Bottom line is they've given no reasons or no specific clips as to why the page gets demonetized. But I don't know. Such is social media. What are you going to do? But yeah, that'll do it for us today. See you tomorrow. Same time, same place. God bless America.